Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with a very special newscast, part of the IT Business Podcast. And today I'm going to attempt to discuss a topic that people have asked me about over the last couple of weeks. Somebody asked if I was going to have a podcast on the topic of tariffs. And initially I said, nah, that sounds like a political thing. I don't talk politics, but we're in a situation where our community are going to be affected by these things. So let me start by telling you some of the things that I have already dealt with. One of them is customer perception. My clients, of course, asking, should we buy computers now ahead of any tariff so we don't have to pay higher prices later? And then I did actually go and try to purchase 9 computers because we thought that 2025 was all going to be about upgrading our clients to Windows 11. And of course, the computers that don't meet the requirements, we would have to replace. And some of us did a good thing and started doing this a year ago, 18 months ago. I did some as well. Basically, I do the time frame from a year before the deadline. So October of 2024, we started doing upgrades. Actually did 4 2 weeks ago as part of my client move. And my next client, we have to upgrade 9. So I went to go purchase 9 computers. I went to my distributor. They showed in stock, ordered them, but they didn't ship. And I said, ooh, well, that could be a problem. I actually went back, found another 9 that said specifically in stock, talked to my rep, and he said, yes, they're here. Click those ship. Click those to order, and those shipped yesterday. So I have 9 computers coming. There was about a 5% price difference, but it was a different model, different thing. So I don't think that it had to do anything with tariffs. But of course, those are the things that we are worried about. So 2025 is simply going to be more than will things cost more. There's a lot of other stuff that comes into play. And to help me go through all of this, I am bringing aboard the industry's leading analyst, Jay McBain, chief analyst at Canalys, and he's going to help us sort everything out. So, Jay, welcome to the IT Business Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me back. It's quite a time to be alive.
Yeah, you can say that in many different ways. So when we first discussed doing this, it was actually a couple of days ago, and my goodness, in those 2.5 days, a lot's already changed. So can you bring us up to speed with what is it that we need to know now? Where do we stand?
Yeah, so I mean, we're watching the situation closely from an MSP, from a VAR, from a customer lens. We have around the world this year about $1 trillion of IT hardware that's going to be shipped. So we're watching, each category. You talked about PCs. So yesterday we showed that in first quarter of this year, based on tariffs and based on reactionary measures by the vendors and distribution and customers, partners are buying ahead. Distribution is storing, some equipment for customers. We had a surge of 9.4% growth in PC shipments around the world. If we double click on the epicenter of the tariff conversation, which is in the US, Lenovo grew by 20% year over year. HP grew 13%. This is outpacing customer demand. You talked about Windows 10 end of service in October. We also have those laptops that we sent everyone home during the first months of COVID that are now, many of them, over 5 years old. We also, the third thing is we have this AI generation of PC that a lot of them we saw announced at CES this year. So it was supposed to be outside of tariffs and outside of any geopolitical or economic conditions, a real nice double-digit growth year for PCs, given that trifecta of demand that we saw centering in. But now it's economic, where companies are moving in, using distribution, using some partner buy-aheads. You talked about buying the 9 devices, and playing this from a cost game. And every day we seem to look for our damage report, and with tariffs now hitting 125%. This has a material impact. We heard this morning that Apple, for example, shipped 6 tons of products into the US on emergency aircraft. And they got to spin out of Indian customs and everything else and ask for favors. And it was almost like a military operation to get devices shipped in inbound before these things would take effect. So yeah, hour by hour, we're watching these changes.
And that seems to have been the real trigger where people all of a sudden realized, oh, my iPhone is going to cost me more. We got to pay attention. It's weird how consumer products are kind of driving our perception, even though a lot of these tariffs are aimed at big tech. At least that's what the headlines say. I'm going to show a graphic up here and talk about this is the latest tariff updates as of this morning. My research obviously could be wrong, but the U.S. has the tariffs on China. China has retaliated. And then, of course, other countries are now involved. The European Union has weighed in and stuff. So all of these things are starting to snowball in all of that. Now, obviously, we're looking at this and a lot of people are speculating.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of where the actual numbers are and what we really should focus on, what do you think that is?
Yeah, so in the end, I don't think any of our customers want to pay 145% more, or in this case, 125% more for the products that they were purchasing last month. For less, we're talking the doubling of price. And you mentioned manufacturing moving, and that doesn't happen quickly. That's kind of a 18-month build out of U.S. manufacturing and U.S. jobs and things like that. But smart people are looking at the cost of an iPhone, for example, or a Samsung smartphone, or a cost of a Dell, Lenovo, HP PC, and said, if that were to be developed in U.S. using U.S. labor and building out the infrastructure to do that, what would the cost of these devices be? And in many cases, it would be that doubling or more of the price that we're seeing with tariffs today. So it's going to shake down. I think most people understand that this is not a long-term economic policy. I think it's, and not to dive into politics, but it's a shorter-term, set of negotiations to bring everybody back to the table, to right side what people felt that was imbalances around the world, and really drive a consumer sentiment back to U.S. manufactured goods. The net result, though, is costs are going to go up. And when you look at deploying these devices, and it's not just PCs or smartphones. I made a post yesterday looking at servers, and 40% of MSPs that are decommissioning servers today are saying that they're over 9 years old. So that's almost half of the server environment is older in generation as well, and asked to be able to be stepped into more AI specific workloads, and to freshen that fleet also has a big Chinese element, and as well as Asia Pacific element in terms of chips and other things. So yeah, a lot on the go, and we are helping our customers manage this uncertainty and this volatility. And over the course of 45 years, this is what the channel has always done. It's one of the services we provide, is having our finger on the pulse, having our fingers, both in hardware, software, and the services that we wrap around it, getting to that best outcome for the client. But in this case, it's almost that daily update of what's going to happen on April 11th, and then what's going to happen on April 12th, and then what's going to happen on Monday as we start the new week. And are these times for pausing customer demand? Is this the time to jump ahead for your customers and go like you did and call distribution and see if there's things that we can do to, perhaps buffer or do some risk aversion in terms of critical things? We know devices break. We know that, different things happen. Should we be doubling or tripling our reserves for that case. And again, driving to that positive outcome for the client.
Right. So you made a point that I want to reference and then also kind of take us back in history a little bit. You mentioned the year of our COVID where we literally had a stoppage in the supply chain. This doesn't appear to be the same thing, so I don't understand people hoarding PCs the same way we hoarded toilet paper back then. But that, along with the fact that we tried to do this, Buy American thing, I believe it was late 80s, early 90s, where there was this big push to buy American. Does that have anything to play into this where that's a cycle coming back around?
Yeah, I think it's a long-term cycle. And as you know, every decade or, over every 20, 30 years, there's obviously cyclical. We go global and then become a bit more national. Again, I think this is a major rebalancing. The attempt is a major rebalancing. There's a lot of moving parts, and I'm not an economist, nor am I a political analyst, but there are people that feel that they've got the backing, and they've been given a mission to go and do this. So as we're not going to change things as MSPs. We're not going to change things in this industry. Again, all we can do is focus on our customer. That level of customer obsession is how we're going to earn, the money we make today, and continue to, support them, and perhaps, enrich those services as well as some of these other things creep in. This doesn't affect, software subscriptions. This doesn't affect, a lot of the other things that we're doing. One of the posts I made a couple of days ago, which is interesting, is the average partner now globally only has hardware contributing 16%, 1/6 of their entire P&L. And from a profitability percent, that's revenue. From a profitability percent, it only makes up 13% of our profitability. And I understand that there are VARs that are 80% hardware and things like that, but there's been a massive shift over the last 20 years, not just to managed services, but in all the consulting, design, architecture, implementation, integration, and hundreds of other services, where it now makes up, software and services make up 87% of the profit in our businesses. So the good news is, over the course of time, if this did hit in the late 80s or 90s, where somebody might have been 80 or 90% revenue and profit based in terms of products, PC products and servers and storage, networking, firewalls and cybersecurity, this probably would have a major effect on our own industry in terms of driving some bankruptcies, driving some real churn for smaller companies who don't have the capital or credit facilities. So there's another trend underway here, that the move to managed services, the move from our own businesses to supporting our clients in so many different places. This has protected ourselves in this time of volatility as well.
Now, you mentioned, the fact that hardware is not a big, huge piece of our business. And for me, it's a little bit more, because I still have lawyers that have to have on-prem servers because those vendors never went to the cloud. But for people that did go to cloud, I read one of the articles mentioned that cloud services might see an increase because of the data centers, GPU storage, and things like that. So those of us that are using those for, backup for our clients, those of us that are doing private data clouds and stuff like that, do you see that being affected in any way?
Yeah, I mean, the cloud this year, cloud infrastructure, so that's AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, through Alibaba, IBM, Oracle, top 10 cloud infrastructure companies, it's all based on hardware. So you got to remember that the amount of CPUs and GPUs, NVIDIA is the second most valuable company in the world, and they're growing by triple digits. That's affected in terms of where those processors are manufactured. Most of the processors come out of Taiwan. So getting these kind of tariff situations as well. But think about beyond processing, the storage, massive storage, the massive data centers around networking and cyber, and then plugged into all of the electricity and water and power, all the other things. So think of the massive amounts of hardware that these magnificent 7 companies, these massive hyperscalers are consuming. And they're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of hardware spend as we ramp up for AI. And this is all directly connected to these tariffs. So yeah, if they get 125% increase, every dollar of consumption of cloud is going to go up by double. And remember, some of the biggest consumers of cloud are SaaS companies. So if you have a subscription today to Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, HubSpot, in legal software, the 5,000 legal tech companies, their bills for AWS or Microsoft or Google, however they built their software, their cost of goods sold are going to double as well. So the trickle effect is that every dollar of software in the world, there's about $1 trillion of software, runs on $1 of hardware. There's $1 trillion of hardware. So wherever you see this opportunity around our customers, you see in the back end of this, the supply chain, the logistics part of this, a heavy load, especially in the tech industry, which is so based in Asia.
Yep. All right. Well, Jay, I'm going to ask probably the most political question I've ever asked on a show. You live here in Florida. You've been in the U.S. for a while, but you're actually Canadian. Do you ever give different analysis based on your Canadian heritage versus being here in the U.S.? And is Canada laughing at us right now?
Yeah, I don't tend to, because I start like I did here with global numbers. When I go into the Canadian numbers, it would be different than the U.S. numbers. But I will say that I'm most worried as a Canadian, now an American citizen. But with that legacy, I'm most worried about the longer term effects. I know that in Canadian grocery stores, there is now a flag beside every price. And many of the US products, like alcohol, for example, have been removed from the shelves completely. But for everything else, the Fruit Loops you buy and the bread and the milk, everything now has a flag. And so people are not looking at the price anymore. They're looking at country of origin. So I'm worried about long-term effects. And I know the short-term rebalancing, but Canadians are kind of well known as having their elbows up right now. And when your best friends boo your national anthem, there's a lot that goes into that. And 93% of Canadians, which are as divided as Americans, left and right, it's 50-50, and it's a hard fight. Divisiveness is around the world. But 93% of Canadians have joined together for this external force and are negative on everything. And this same number echoes through Europe and Asia Pacific. So there might be generational effects here in terms of sovereignty, in terms of new unions and partnerships, being formed. And just a reminder that, the way the world is run since the Second World War, may not be as trustworthy as we had thought it'd been for the last, 75 years.
Very interesting. Well, Jay, as we close out here, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask that you think our listeners should know about where tariffs are going, what we should do, how we should respond?
Yeah, I wouldn't get too caught up, again, in the hour by hour. I mean, this is kind of like a movie. We have our popcorn and we're kind of watching this. And, this is the art of the deal. These are negotiations that are tough. And, every time there's a retaliation, it seems to, cause both sides. It's a little bit of a moving situation. So I would be focused 100% on my customer. I would be focused on the things I'm always focused on. Obviously making them compliant, helping them govern, kind of a changing situation. But we've always been that trusted advisor that, are smart in terms of what the market's doing, can help them in terms of their decision making and their planning and their strategy. And, whether this is a short-term, negotiating tactic, whether it goes on for, the rest of 2025, we just have to be really smart and really customer focused, as opposed to becoming politically focused or, getting on Facebook or LinkedIn and having, big fights and things like that. I think that, our opportunity has always been. And services are outgrowing the hardware and software that we talked about this year. So we should be thinking about those services. And 82% of our clients are outsourcing more in 2025 than they did in 2024. They can't find cyber talent. They can't find AI talent. We're the ones that can go and help them through this volatility, as well as reach their bigger goals.
All right. Well, as per usual, Jay, thank you for great insight and even a sense of calm in all of this turmoil. Things will keep on moving, and we'll look to you for more answers when things change down the road. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you so much.
And that's going to do it, folks. Thank you for joining us, and tune in for another newscast, part of the IT Business Podcast. We'll see you out there. Holla.